If you're in the market to buy a home, experts say this fall could finally bring some relief. A new report from Realtor.com reveals that October 12th through the 18th could be the best week of the entire year to buy a house, with potential savings of more than $15,000 compared to peak summer prices. Hope we got your attention now. This morning, we are joined by Hannah Jones from Realtor.com to break down what is driving this shift. Hannah, thank you for joining us. I got to ask you, why mid-October? Why is this the best time to buy a home in 2025?
So mid-October and the fall more broadly brings the best historical conditions for buyers in the housing market. It really comes down to three things. There are more homes on the market, there are fewer other buyers in the market, and prices are a bit lower. And this fall could be even more favorable than in the past few years, as inventory levels have reached the highest level in more than 5 years. And on top of that, as I'm sure many people know, if you have been in the market, mortgage rates have eased in recent months, which means that buyers have a little bit more buying power, which is great when home prices are still relatively high.
I mean, and that's a great segue into the next question, because a lot of people are wondering, how they maximize their savings once they finally get into the market. Say they're hopping in October and they want to get the most bang for their buck. What tips do you have for especially first-time home buyers?
Yeah, so the good news is the fall brings a little bit lower home prices. Home prices tend to peak in the summer, when you're between school terms and there are lots of buyers in the market and everyone's, competing with each other for a home. But once you get into the fall, you see that home prices cool a little bit and buyers have a little bit more wiggling room or a little bit more maneuverability in the housing market. And so you can look for homes that have seen price reductions or, see if a home has been on the market for a while and how you can get a seller to work with you.
So let's talk a bit about inventory and, those pricing changes that you mentioned and how buyers can watch out in their local area. Because, we can't compare Hampton Roads, Virginia to Atlanta, Georgia, for example. So what are the tips for just kind of staying local and staying focused?
Right, so there are a few different things you can do. One great way to get a good idea of your local housing market is to connect with a local real estate agent. You can find an agent on Realtor.com or through other means, but local real estate agents really know what's going on locally. And it's, we've seen that buyers have better outcomes. They feel better about their outcomes if they connect with a real estate agent really early to start getting a feel for the market.
Now, we're about, let's say less than 3 weeks at this point from that ideal week in October to really get the best price if you're in the home buying market. Let's say somebody's watching this and they haven't started the process at all, but now they're trying to jump on that specific week in October. Do they have enough time at this point?
For sure, no worries. The fall in general is a good time, all the way up until, you get to Thanksgiving. That's when listings really start to fall off, but you have a good amount of time this fall. And some things you can start to do to get ready is, check your credit score, get pre-approved for a mortgage so you really know what sort of budget you're working with. And then you can, search on places like Realtor.com and look for a home that's, in the area you want, that's in the price range you want. And you have a better idea of what's available and what you're working with.
Now, you talked about that pre-approval. A question about that as well, because there are so many different, mortgage companies, banks, credit unions, all sorts of things offering all these deals and incentives. It can be very overwhelming, especially for first-time home buyers. What tips do you have for picking the best possible place for you to get that pre-approval and to ultimately get a mortgage?
Well, we found in research that the best way to get the best possible mortgage rate is by shopping around, getting multiple bids from different lenders. That's, you can take a significant amount off of the mortgage rate you ultimately go with just by shopping around. And on top of that, we do find that in the new construction segment, newly built homes, builders are more likely to offer, mortgage rate buy downs or different incentives that can make homeownership a little bit more affordable, especially for first-time buyers.
Okay, so a little bit of homework can really make a difference. Hannah Jones there with Realtor.com. Thank you so much for your tips and advice as the fall season continues. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Best of luck.